a grace period, and simply because we had from January of this year to 30th of June to file our returns, so no extension.
Yeah. No extension.
So right now we have about 5 million taxpayers who filed their returns, and we expect that by midnight today we'll have more taxpayers who have filed their returns for the last year.
Are we able to establish, for instance, a number by midnight? We're hoping to have hit this before we close the session.
We have a target of 5.5 million. But then you see, because this is a system that where you as a taxpayer actually go to the system and file, we can only remind our taxpayers that you still have until midnight to file. Of course, you can file later, but then you'll be penalized for late filing. So for the individual, we have a penalty of 2,000 per year not filed, and for all the late filing. So that means that if you don't file this year, then even come next year, the system will not allow you to file that year's return without filing this one, and you find yourself with a penalty of the 2,000. You can amend your return anytime within 5 years after the return was due, and this is within as provided for by the Tax Procedures Act. So a taxpayer can amend. When they amend upwards, such that they have a tax liability, they now make the payment. But if they amend downwards, it has to go through an approval process before the amendment can be accepted.
Right. And when one files returns, you either get a nil balance below the receipt, the acknowledgement receipt, or you get a negative figure or a positive figure.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us what those figures mean.
Ideally, for an individual who is generating employment income only, your pay as you earn has already been deducted. So you should find that you have a nil because your employer has deducted your taxes and you have a credit, or you're giving us is a debit when you file a return. But there are some instances where maybe there's a relief that the employer has not granted you, so you claim it in your return. When you do that, you're going to find that you have a negative figure. That means that there's a refund that is due to you, and you can make the application on your iTax profile. If it's a positive figure, it means you need to make a payment.
How do I get to process that payment?
So under your iTax profile, there's a payment tab. You click on that and then you register the payment. When you register the payment, it means that the system is going to pull the amount from your return, and you just submit and get an acknowledgement slip, which you're going to use to make by your preferred mode. That may be bank or M-Pesa.
How about the reverse, when the government owes me?
So now you just, at the same process, log into your iTax profile, go to refunds, apply for the refund.
Sometimes back the authority had talked about shutting down certain obligations on, nil returns filing. Maybe you expound that for us.
There are instances where you find some businesses register for taxes such as value-added tax and also maybe pay as you earn, and then we find every single month they are filing nil. So as a revenue authority, we have to come up with strategies of identifying that the self-assessment are correct and accurate. And one of the things we can do is deregister the nil filers. And what we expect is that anyone who is affected by this nil filing will come forward and say, I need this obligation to operate. And they'll have to follow the process, the due process of getting the registered again. They'll have to prove that there are no taxes they've not accounted for in the past, and that enhances compliance.
Do we have a figure of, for instance, how many businesses in that case we are looking to deregister as the authority?
So for the VAT that was deregistered a few, I think, is it a month back? I think there were around 60,000 taxpayers who were affected by this. We also have a voluntary tax disclosure program where a taxpayer can disclose their previously undisclosed tax liability. And this is for the purpose of being granted relief of penalties and interest. We hope with this program, more taxpayers will come in and have a new start, sort of. So it's an amnesty. You get the relief for the penalties and interest. You get into a payment plan of up to 12 months. And this eases the move to a more compliant businesses for maybe a taxpayer who was previously not complying.